She can't do that, Jamal whispered, sliding half his sandwich toward Marcus. My mom says teachers aren't allowed to take food as punishment. What would you do if your child came home hungry day after day? When Dr. Johnson discovered his son was being starved by a prejudiced teacher who took his lunch every day as punishment, he didn't just get angry, he got even. But what exactly did this brilliant neurosurgeon put in that special lunch bag? And why did it leave the teacher blue-faced and terrified when the police arrived? This shocking true story of injustice, courage, and a father's ingenious plan will leave you stunned. Don't miss a single moment of this incredible journey to justice. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published news stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. Marcus Johnson stood outside room 203, clutching his backpack straps tightly. At 12 years old, being the new kid at Westfield Academy mid-semester was intimidating enough, but the reputation of Ms. Peterson, his new homeroom teacher, made his stomach twist into knots. You must be Marcus, a sharp voice cut through his thoughts. Ms. Peterson towered over him, her thin lips pressed into what might generously be called a smile. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her pale skin. We don't tolerate tardiness at Westfield. But the principal was showing me, first rule in my classroom, no excuses, she interrupted, holding the door open with impatience radiating from every line of her body. Marcus stepped inside, feeling 26 pairs of eyes on him. Unlike his previous public school, Westfield's student body was predominantly white. He was one of only 3 black students in the class. Class, this is Marcus Johnson. He's joining us from. Ms. Peterson consulted a paper, Lincoln Elementary. Take the empty seat in the back. Marcus moved toward the indicated desk, conscious of whispers following him. Isn't that where they had those budget cuts? My dad says those schools barely teach anything. The principal, Mr. Wilson, had seemed welcoming enough during their brief meeting. Your father's contribution to our science lab renovation is much appreciated, he'd said with a hearty handshake. We're delighted to welcome a student of your caliber. But Mr. Wilson wasn't here now as Ms. Peterson began the morning lessons, repeatedly singling out Marcus with questions. Since you're joining us mid-chapter, Marcus, perhaps you can tell us the capital of Kazakhstan? When he correctly answered Astana, her eyes narrowed slightly. It's actually Nur-Sultan now, she corrected. They renamed it in 2019. By lunch period, Marcus had already learned an important lesson. Ms. Peterson had expectations about him, and being knowledgeable wasn't one of them. As he stood in the cafeteria line, a friendly voice broke through his isolation. Hey, new kid. Wanna sit with us? A smiling boy named Jamal waved him over, offering the first genuine welcome of the day. Perhaps Westfield wouldn't be so bad after all. A week into his time at Westfield, Marcus had established a routine. He'd arrive early, review his notes to avoid Ms. Peterson's trap questions, and sit with Jamal and a few others at lunch. But everything changed during Thursday's history class. Take your seats for the quiz, Ms. Peterson announced, distributing papers. Marcus moved toward his desk but hesitated. The painful welts from yesterday's disciplinary measure made sitting excruciating. Ms. Peterson had struck him with a ruler across his lower back for disrupting class, when he'd merely corrected a mathematical error on the board. I'd prefer to stand, Ms. Peterson, he said quietly. Her eyes flashed. Sit down immediately. Ma'am, I can't. Are you defying me? Her voice rose sharply, drawing everyone's attention. No, ma'am, but I have a medical detention, Mr. Johnson. And since you insist on disrupting my class, you can hand over your lunch. My lunch? Marcus echoed in confusion. Yes. Perhaps going hungry will teach you respect. Hand it over, now. Marcus reluctantly retrieved his lunch bag from his backpack and placed it on her desk. The brown paper bag contained his favorite sandwich, turkey and avocado on whole grain bread, that his father had prepared that morning, along with fruit and a homemade cookie. You may take the quiz standing if you insist on making a spectacle of yourself, she said coldly. Marcus stood at his desk, fighting back tears of pain and humiliation as classmates stared. He couldn't focus on the questions before him. All he could think about was Ms. Peterson eating his lunch later, and what he would tell his father. During lunch period, he sat with Jamal, stomach growling. "She can't do that," Jamal whispered, sliding half his sandwich toward Marcus. "My mom says teachers aren't allowed to take food as punishment." "It's fine," Marcus lied. "I'm not even hungry." But when the bell rang at 3 p.m., Marcus saw Ms. Peterson drop his empty lunch bag into her trash can. Their eyes met briefly, and a cold smile crossed her lips. That evening, when his father asked about his day, Marcus couldn't bring himself to mention the incident. Dr. Johnson worked long hours at the hospital and was already sacrificing so much to give Marcus this better opportunity. How could he add another burden? "Fine," Marcus said, pushing food around his plate. "Everything's fine." But as he struggled to find a comfortable sleeping position that didn't press against his bruises, Marcus knew that nothing was fine at all. By the third week, a disturbing pattern had emerged. Every day, for increasingly minor infractions, Ms. Peterson would confiscate Marcus's lunch. First, it was for talking back when he politely corrected a historical date. Then for dress code violation when his uniform shirt became untucked after recess. Soon, standing instead of sitting became a guaranteed excuse. "But you know why I can't sit?" Marcus had whispered desperately after class one day, his voice trembling. "All I know is that you're deliberately undermining my authority," Ms. Peterson had replied icily. "Perhaps your previous school tolerated such behavior, but at Westfield, we have standards." The physical pain from Ms. Peterson's ruler had mostly subsided, but Marcus continued to stand during her classes, now as a silent protest against her treatment. Each day, the ritual repeated: he would stand, she would demand his lunch, and he would go hungry while she smugly consumed the meals his father carefully prepared. Jamal and a few other classmates tried to help, sharing portions of their own lunches, but Marcus found it increasingly difficult to accept their charity. "You need to tell someone," Jamal urged as they sat in the library during study period. "This isn't right, Marcus." "Tell who?" "The principal thinks she's teacher of the year." "And my dad." Marcus trailed off, thinking of his father's proud face when he'd enrolled him at Westfield. "He's working double shifts just to afford this place. I can't disappoint him." "It's not your fault," Jamal insisted. "My older brother says what she's doing is discrimination." Marcus shook his head. "I can't prove that." But privately, he couldn't help noticing that none of the other students had their lunches confiscated, regardless of their behavior. Even Tyler, who regularly disrupted class with jokes and pranks, never faced the same punishment. At home, Marcus had developed strategies to hide his hunger. He claimed he was having big lunches at school while taking smaller breakfasts and dinners. He invented a school snack program to explain why he wasn't hungry in the evenings. Each lie weighed on him, adding to his growing isolation. His father, though tired from long hospital shifts, began to notice changes. "You've lost weight," Dr. Johnson observed one evening. "And your last progress report showed your grades slipping. Is everything okay at school?" "Just adjusting," Marcus mumbled. "You know you can tell me anything, right? That's our deal, honesty first, always." Marcus nodded, guilt flooding through him. Their honesty first policy had been established after his mother died 3 years ago. Through their grief, father and son had promised never to hide important things from each other. Now, Marcus was breaking that promise daily. That night, as Marcus lay in bed, his stomach aching with hunger, he heard his father on the phone in the next room. "He's not thriving like we hoped," Dr. Johnson was saying quietly. "I'm wondering if we made the right choice with Westfield." The thought of causing his father to doubt his decisions made Marcus feel even worse. Tomorrow, he decided, he would find a way to endure Ms. Peterson's treatment without letting it affect his performance. He would make his father proud, no matter the cost. What Marcus didn't realize was that the cost was becoming too high to bear alone. As October turned to November, the effects of Ms. Peterson's lunch discipline became impossible to hide. Marcus had lost nearly 10 pounds, his uniform hanging loosely on his thinning frame. Dark circles shadowed his eyes from nights spent trying to complete homework while battling hunger headaches. During a routine physical education assessment, Marcus fainted on the track. He awoke in the nurse's office with Ms. Ryan, the school counselor, sitting beside him. "Your blood sugar was dangerously low," she explained gently. "The nurse said this isn't the first time you've seemed lightheaded in her office. Is everything okay, Marcus?" He stared at the ceiling, the weight of weeks of silence crushing him. "I'm just not used to the workload," he lied. Ms. Ryan studied him carefully. "You know, I've been reviewing your file. Your previous school records show excellent academic performance and perfect attendance. Yet here, your grades are slipping, and you seem withdrawn. If something's happening, I'd like to help." For a moment, Marcus considered telling her everything: the confiscated lunches, the welts that had finally healed, the daily humiliation. But then he remembered overhearing Ms. Ryan and Ms. Peterson laughing together in the faculty lounge. They were friends. Would she even believe him? "I'm fine," he insisted, pushing himself upright. "Can I go back to class?" That evening, his father received a call from the school nurse about the fainting incident. Dr. James Johnson, chief of neurosurgery at Memorial Hospital, rarely left work early, but that day he made an exception. When Marcus arrived home, he found his father waiting in the kitchen with a plate of grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, his comfort food since childhood. "The nurse mentioned low blood sugar," Dr. Johnson said, his voice deliberately casual as he placed the food in front of Marcus. "She also mentioned weight loss." Marcus stared at the sandwich, shame and hunger warring within him. "I've noticed you barely eating at home, claiming you're full from school lunches," his father continued. "Yet you're losing weight. Something doesn't add up, son." "Dad, it's nothing, Marcus." His father's tone stopped him. "Remember after Mom died, what we promised each other?" "Honesty first," Marcus whispered, tears filling his eyes. Dr. Johnson sat beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Whatever it is, we face it together. That's how we've always done it." The kindness broke something in Marcus. His shoulders began to shake as tears spilled down his cheeks. For the first time since the torment began, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of his pain and humiliation. "I'm so hungry, Dad," he admitted, his voice cracking. "All the time." "Why? What's happening to the lunches I pack you?" Marcus took a shuddering breath, but couldn't bring himself to answer. The words seemed stuck in his throat, trapped behind weeks of silence and shame. Dr. Johnson didn't press. Instead, he pulled his son into a tight embrace, holding him as sobs racked his thin body. They stayed that way for a long time, the soup growing cold beside them. "You don't have to tell me everything tonight," his father finally said. "But I need you to eat, and then rest. Tomorrow is Saturday. No school, no pressure. And when you're ready, we'll talk." That night, for the first time in weeks, Marcus slept deeply, the burden of his secret partially lifted. He didn't know what would happen when he told his father the full truth, but somehow, he felt the faintest flicker of hope. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear. Dr. Johnson, usually called in for weekend surgeries, had cleared his schedule. When Marcus shuffled into the kitchen, he found his father making blueberry pancakes, another comfort food from happier days. "Sit," Dr. Johnson said, sliding a stack onto a plate. "Eat first, talk second." Marcus obeyed, his body gratefully accepting the nourishment. As he ate, his father refilled his plate without comment, twice. When Marcus finally pushed back from the table, feeling properly full for the first time in weeks, Dr. Johnson poured them both hot chocolate and sat across from him. "Now," he said gently. "Start from the beginning." The story poured out of Marcus in a rush, the initial ruler strikes across his back when he had corrected a math problem, the pain that made sitting unbearable, his decision to stand instead, and Ms. Peterson's retaliatory pattern of confiscating his lunches. 23 lunches, Marcus concluded. That's how many she's taken since September. His father's expression remained carefully neutral, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. And the other students? Does she take their lunches too? Marcus shook his head. Just mine. Has she struck any other students with a ruler? No. At least, not that I've seen. Dr. Johnson took a slow, deliberate breath. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Marcus stared into his mug. You were so happy about getting me into Westfield. You've been working extra shifts to pay the tuition. I didn't want to disappoint you. Marcus, look at me. His father waited until their eyes met. Nothing is more important to me than your well-being. Not a fancy school, not what others think, nothing. Do you understand? Marcus nodded, feeling both relieved and ashamed. I want you to know something, Dr. Johnson continued. What this teacher has done is wrong on every level. It's abuse, it's discrimination, and it stops now. What are you going to do? Marcus asked, anxiety creeping back into his voice. His father's eyes held a determined gleam that Marcus recognized from challenging medical cases. First, I'm going to document everything. Those welts on your back, they've healed. Marcus nodded. We'll need to have our family doctor examine you and make a record of your weight loss and nutritional status. Dr. Johnson was thinking aloud now. Then, we'll need witnesses. You mentioned your friend Jamal has seen some of this. And a few others, Marcus confirmed. But what if no one believes us? Ms. Peterson is really popular with the other teachers and the principal. Dr. Johnson's expression softened. Son, I need you to trust me. I won't let anyone hurt you again, not her, not anyone. But I need a little time to handle this the right way. You mean we're going to report her? Marcus asked. Eventually. But first, his father said, a new resolve hardening his features, I think Ms. Peterson needs a taste of her own medicine. And I have just the prescription in mind. Dr. Johnson spent the remainder of the weekend making calls, to the family attorney, to their family physician, and to several colleagues at the hospital. Marcus overheard fragments of conversations, his father's normally calm voice occasionally rising with controlled anger. Yes, deliberate starvation of a child. No, the school administration hasn't been notified yet. Documented weight loss of nearly 12 pounds in 6 weeks. Yes, physical evidence of the corporal punishment has healed, but we have the dates recorded. On Sunday evening, Dr. Johnson called Marcus into his home office. Spread across his desk were printouts of school policies, state education laws, and medical documentation. I want to discuss my plan with you, he said, gesturing for Marcus to sit. You have a right to know what's happening and to have a say in it. Marcus sat cautiously, still not entirely comfortable after weeks of standing in class. Are we suing the school? Eventually, that may be necessary, his father acknowledged. But legal processes are slow, and you'd still have to face Ms. Peterson every day while the case proceeded. I have something more immediate in mind. He slid a document across the desk, Westfield Academy's Teacher Code of Conduct. One paragraph was highlighted, under no circumstances shall food be withheld as a form of punishment. Nutrition is recognized as essential to student learning and well-being. She's breaking their own rules, Marcus observed. Exactly. And according to your classmates' parents, whom I've spoken with discreetly, this isn't the first time. But administrators have dismissed previous complaints because of Ms. Peterson's connections. Her father sits on the school board. Marcus's heart sank. So nothing will happen to her. Dr. Johnson's smile held an edge Marcus rarely saw, the expression he imagined his father wore in the operating room when faced with a particularly challenging surgical case. Oh, something will definitely happen. You see, while legal channels move slowly, public embarrassment and professional disgrace happen quite quickly. But for this to work, I need your cooperation. What do I have to do? Marcus asked. Continue exactly as you have been, stand instead of sit, remain respectful despite her provocations. Let her take your lunch tomorrow. Marcus's stomach clenched at the thought. Dad, I don't think I can handle another day without food. You won't have to. Dr. Johnson reached into his briefcase and removed a small nutrition bar. Keep this in your pocket for emergencies. But trust me when I say Ms. Peterson won't be enjoying her stolen lunch tomorrow. He outlined the plan, explaining each step carefully. As Marcus listened, his anxiety gradually transformed into something else, not quite excitement, but a sense of justice long overdue. What about after? Marcus asked. Won't she just punish me worse once she realizes what happened? She won't have the chance, his father assured him. I've arranged to take the entire week off work. Tomorrow morning, I'll drop you at school as usual. But I'll be returning shortly after, with reinforcements. That night, Marcus watched his father preparing his lunch with meticulous care, wearing latex gloves and measuring ingredients with the precision of a pharmacist. The ordinary brown paper bag looked identical to those of previous weeks, but its contents were anything but typical. Remember, Dr. Johnson said as they finished, this isn't about revenge. It's about justice, and making sure no other child faces what you've endured. As Marcus lay in bed that night, for the first time in weeks, he felt something other than dread about the coming school day. Whatever his father had planned, he trusted that tomorrow would be different. What he couldn't know was just how different it would be, or how completely Ms. Peterson's reign of terror was about to end. Monday morning arrived with a peculiar sense of anticipation. As Dr. Johnson prepared breakfast, Marcus noticed his father's movements were precise, almost ceremonial. There was something different about him today, a focused intensity beneath his usual calm demeanor. Nervous? Dr. Johnson asked, placing a protein-rich breakfast before Marcus. A little, Marcus admitted. What exactly is in that lunch? His father's smile was enigmatic. Nothing dangerous or harmful. Just, educational. The important thing is that you follow our plan exactly. When she takes your lunch, don't protest too much. Just enough to make it seem normal. As they drove to school, Dr. Johnson reviewed the timing once more. I'll be arriving at precisely 11:45 with Principal Wilson. Your lunch period begins at noon. That gives us 15 minutes to complete the preliminary discussions before the main event. What if she doesn't take my lunch today? Marcus asked. She will, his father replied with certainty. People like Ms. Peterson are predictable in their cruelty. They need it, feed on it. She won't pass up an opportunity to exert power over you. At the school entrance, Dr. Johnson gave Marcus's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Remember what we discussed. No matter what happens, stay calm and dignified. That's how we win, not by descending to her level, but by exposing it for what it is. Marcus nodded, clutching the brown paper bag that felt strangely heavier than usual. As he walked through the school gates, he glanced back to see his father watching intently, phone in hand. Morning classes passed in a blur of anxiety and anticipation. Marcus found it difficult to concentrate, his mind constantly returning to the mysterious lunch in his backpack and his father's cryptic plan. By the time history class with Ms. Peterson arrived before lunch period, his heart was pounding so loudly he was certain everyone could hear it. Take your seats and open your textbooks to page 127, Ms. Peterson instructed as students filed in. Marcus remained standing at his desk, as had become his habit. Immediately, Ms. Peterson's gaze locked onto him like a predator spotting wounded prey. Mr. Johnson, she said with exaggerated patience, I believe I asked everyone to be seated. I prefer to stand, Ms. Peterson, Marcus replied, his voice steadier than he felt. Her smile was cold. Your preferences are irrelevant in my classroom. Either sit down immediately or surrender your lunch as usual. From the corner of his eye, Marcus saw Jamal shift uncomfortably in his seat. Several other students were watching now, the daily ritual having become a source of morbid fascination. I can't sit down, Marcus said, injecting just enough defiance into his voice to provoke her. Ms. Peterson strode to his desk, hand extended. Then you know the consequences. Hand it over. With deliberate slowness, Marcus reached into his backpack and withdrew the brown paper bag. He hesitated just long enough to make it seem like reluctance before placing it in her waiting hand. "One day you'll learn that rules exist for a reason," she said loudly enough for the entire class to hear. "Until then, perhaps hunger will be a more effective teacher than I've been." She placed the bag on her desk with triumphant finality before continuing the lesson. Marcus caught Jamal's eye and gave a subtle nod. Everything was proceeding exactly as his father had predicted. Now they just had to wait for noon, when Ms. Peterson would open the special lunch that Dr. Johnson had so carefully prepared. At precisely 12 o'clock, the lunch bell rang. Students gathered their belongings, filing out of the classroom with the eager energy of the perpetually hungry. Marcus moved slowly, deliberately taking his time as Ms. Peterson settled behind her desk and reached for the brown paper bag. "Aren't you going to lunch, Mr. Johnson?" she asked with mock concern. "Oh, that's right, you have none today." Jamal hesitated at the door. "Come on, Marcus," he called. "You can share mine." "How touching," Ms. Peterson remarked dryly. "Such charity. Run along, both of you." "I forgot my science notebook," Marcus said, pretending to search his desk. "You go ahead, Jamal." Jamal left reluctantly, closing the door behind him. Now it was just Marcus and Ms. Peterson in the classroom, exactly as planned. With theatrical relish, Ms. Peterson opened the brown bag and peered inside. "Your father does pack a nice lunch," she commented, removing the carefully wrapped sandwich. "Much too good for a boy who doesn't know his place." She unwrapped the sandwich and took a large bite, maintaining eye contact with Marcus as she chewed. Then, her expression changed. Confusion flickered across her face, followed by a grimace. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice rising as she spat the partially chewed bite into her hand. "My lunch," Marcus replied innocently. Ms. Peterson's face was contorting now, her eyes watering. "This is," she gasped, reaching frantically for her water bottle. "What did you put in this sandwich?" The door to the classroom opened. Principal Wilson stepped in, followed by Dr. Johnson in his full medical attire, white coat, stethoscope, hospital ID prominently displayed. "Ghost pepper sauce," Dr. Johnson said calmly. "Mixed with a non-toxic blue food dye. A special recipe I prepared myself this morning, while wearing gloves, of course. 1 drop is enough to make your mouth feel like it's on fire. I believe I used 5. Ms. Peterson gulped water desperately, blue stains spreading across her lips and onto her blouse. "Who are," she sputtered between gasps. "Dr. James Johnson, Chief of Neurosurgery at Memorial Hospital," he introduced himself, voice professionally detached. "Also, Marcus's father. The father whose son you've been systematically starving for the past 6 weeks." Principal Wilson's face paled. "Dr. Johnson, I assure you, I had no knowledge of." "Didn't you?" Dr. Johnson interrupted, his tone still eerily calm. 23 documented incidents of food confiscation. 12 pounds of weight loss in a minor under your care. Not to mention the physical abuse with a ruler that left welts on my son's back, the reason he couldn't sit in class without pain." Ms. Peterson had stopped sputtering now, her face a mixture of pain, shock, and dawning horror. "You have no proof," she managed, though her voice lacked conviction. "Don't I?" Dr. Johnson produced a folder. Medical documentation of Marcus's weight loss and nutritional deficiencies. Dated photographs of the welts on his back. Sworn statements from 5 of his classmates who witnessed you taking his lunches repeatedly. And now, he gestured to her blue-stained mouth and a partially eaten sandwich, irrefutable evidence that you consumed food intended for a child under your care, contrary to both school policy and basic human decency. Principal Wilson was visibly sweating now. "Ms. Peterson, is this true?" Before she could answer, the classroom door opened again. A woman in a business suit entered, followed by 2 uniformed police officers. "Laura Chen, Department of Child Protective Services," she introduced herself briskly. We received a detailed report from Dr. Johnson yesterday. I see his information appears to be accurate. The classroom had become the stage for a drama unlike any Westfield Academy had seen before. Ms. Peterson, her lips and tongue stained bright blue from the dye in the sandwich, sat frozen behind her desk. Principal Wilson stood awkwardly between Dr. Johnson and the door, as if unsure whether to defend his teacher or distance himself from her. "This is absurd," Ms. Peterson finally sputtered, finding her voice. "I was simply enforcing school discipline." The boy was deliberately disruptive, refusing to sit. "Because you had struck him with a ruler across his back," Dr. Johnson interrupted, his calm voice belying the anger in his eyes. "The welts made sitting painful. A fact you were well aware of, since you caused the injury." "Corporal punishment is strictly forbidden at Westfield," Principal Wilson said, his face ashen. "Ms. Peterson, we've never authorized." "Oh, spare me the performance, Wilson," Dr. Johnson cut in. "My son reported the incident to your office the day it happened. According to your secretary, you dismissed it as an exaggeration and took no action." The Child Protective Services officer was making notes on a tablet. "Mr. Wilson, if that's accurate, you may also face charges for failure to report suspected child abuse." The principal's professional demeanor crumbled. "There must be some misunderstanding. Ms. Peterson has been with us for 15 years, she's the daughter of our board chairman." "Ah, and there it is," Dr. Johnson said. "The real reason her behavior has been tolerated all these years. Connections." Ms. Peterson stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is ridiculous. You have no actual proof beyond a child's word against mine. And this," she gestured to her blue-stained mouth, "this is assault. You poisoned me." "Ghost pepper is a food, not a poison," Dr. Johnson replied evenly. "Spicy, certainly, but consumed by millions daily. The food dye is FDA approved and commonly used in children's candies. Nothing I put in that sandwich was harmful, unlike starvation, which can cause lasting damage to a developing child." He turned to the CPS officer. "In my medical opinion, Ms. Peterson is experiencing the temporary discomfort of capsaicin exposure. It will subside within 20 to 30 minutes with no lasting effects. Unlike the psychological trauma and physical effects of systematic food deprivation, which my son has endured for weeks." One of the police officers stepped forward. "Ms. Peterson, we'd like you to come to the station to provide a statement regarding these allegations." "This is outrageous," she protested, her voice rising. "Do you know who my father is?" "I believe that's precisely the problem," Dr. Johnson said quietly. "Everyone here knows exactly who your father is, and they've allowed that knowledge to corrupt their professional judgment and ethical obligations to protect children." He turned to Marcus, who had been watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. "Son, would you please wait outside for a moment? Ms. Chin would like to speak with you privately, and I need to finish my conversation with Principal Wilson and Ms. Peterson." As Marcus stepped into the hallway, he found Jamal and several other classmates waiting anxiously. Word had spread throughout the lunchroom about the police presence at the school. "Is it true?" Jamal asked. "Your dad's a doctor." Marcus nodded, a strange mixture of pride and embarrassment washing over him. "Chief of neurosurgery at Memorial." "Whoa," another classmate whispered. "No wonder he came up with such a crazy plan." Through the closed door, they could hear Ms. Peterson's voice rising hysterically as the gravity of her situation became clear. Years of unchecked behavior were finally catching up to her, and no amount of family connections could erase the blue evidence staining her face. The aftermath unfolded with a swiftness that left the entire school reeling. Ms. Peterson was escorted from the building by the police officers, her blue-stained face partially hidden behind her hand, while students watched from classroom windows. Principal Wilson remained closeted in his office with the school board's emergency response team for hours afterward. By the following morning, the story had reached the local news: prestigious academy teacher accused of abusing and starving student. The headline ran alongside a statement from Westfield Academy expressing deep concern and announcing Ms. Peterson's immediate suspension pending investigation. Dr. Johnson had transformed overnight from an anonymous parent to a force to be reckoned with. When he arrived to accompany Marcus to school the next day, teachers and administrators alike regarded him with a mixture of respect and apprehension. Dr. Johnson, the interim principal, Dr. Martinez, greeted them at the entrance. "I want to personally assure you that we're taking this situation with the utmost seriousness. We've assigned Marcus to a different classroom, and we're conducting a full review of all disciplinary practices." "That's a start," Dr. Johnson replied calmly. "But as I outlined in my email last night, I expect a comprehensive plan addressing not just this isolated incident, but the systemic failures that allowed it to occur." "Of course," Dr. Martinez said hurriedly. "The board is convening an emergency session this afternoon. Your suggested reforms will be the primary agenda item." As they walked through the hallways, Marcus noticed how differently people looked at him now. Students who had previously ignored him offered tentative smiles. Teachers who had been indifferent now greeted him by name. It was as though his father's intervention had made him visible in a way he hadn't been before. His new homeroom teacher, Mr. Bradley, welcomed him warmly. "Choose any seat you like, Marcus. Standing or sitting, whatever's comfortable for you." By lunchtime, the school was buzzing with rumors and speculation. Marcus found Jamal waiting for him at their usual table, along with several other students who had never sat with them before. "Your dad is all over social media," one girl informed him, holding out her phone to show Marcus a video of Dr. Johnson giving a statement outside the police station. "He's being called a hero for standing up to the whole system. Did you know he was on the hospital board that donated the science lab equipment?" another student added. "My mom says the school never even thanked him properly." Marcus hadn't known that. In fact, he was discovering there was much about his father's influence and connections he hadn't appreciated until now. After school, a crowd of reporters had gathered at the edge of school property. Dr. Johnson navigated through them expertly, declining to comment beyond a brief statement. "This case isn't about publicity. It's about protecting children and holding institutions accountable." At home, the phone rang constantly with calls from parents, education advocates, and even a representative from the governor's education task force. Dr. Johnson handled each one with the same measured professionalism, never raising his voice but never backing down from his demands for reform. "The school board is meeting tonight," he told Marcus as they sat down for dinner. "Ms. Peterson's father has recused himself, and they're voting on a new set of accountability measures." "What will happen to her?" Marcus asked, finally voicing the question that had been troubling him. "She's facing criminal charges for child abuse," his father replied honestly. "But more importantly, she'll never be in a position to harm another student. The state licensing board is already reviewing her teaching credentials." "And Principal Wilson?" "He's been placed on administrative leave while they investigate his failure to act on your initial report." Dr. Johnson studied his son carefully. "How are you feeling about all this?" Marcus considered the question. "It's weird. Part of me feels bad about what's happening to them. But another part feels relieved. Vindicated." Marcus nodded. "Is that wrong?" "No, son. It's entirely natural to have mixed feelings. What happened to you was wrong, and those responsible should face consequences. But taking pleasure in another's downfall isn't something we want to cultivate." He reached across the table and squeezed Marcus's hand. "The true victory here isn't their punishment, it's the changes that will protect other students in the future." "Like what?" "Anonymous reporting systems for students. Regular independent reviews of disciplinary practices. Mandatory documentation of all punishments." Dr. Johnson smiled slightly. "And a strict prohibition on teachers consuming students' lunches, explicitly written into the code of conduct." That night, as Marcus prepared for bed, he realized he was looking forward to school the next day for the first time in months. The fear that had become his constant companion was finally beginning to recede, replaced by something that felt almost like hope. When Marcus returned to school the following week, the atmosphere had transformed. Interim Principal Dr. Martinez had implemented immediate changes, an anonymous reporting system for students, transparent disciplinary procedures, and most significantly for Marcus, a nutritionist-designed meal program ensuring no student ever went hungry, regardless of circumstances. His new homeroom teacher, Mr. Bradley, approached education differently from Ms. Peterson. Rather than seeking to embarrass students who answered incorrectly, he celebrated questions and treated mistakes as valuable learning opportunities. "Marcus, I noticed your analysis of the historical context is quite insightful," Mr. Bradley commented, returning a recent assignment. "Have you considered joining the debate team?" Such encouragement was still unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable after months of Ms. Peterson's criticism. But gradually, Marcus began to reclaim his academic confidence. Jamal remained his steadfast friend, but their lunch table had expanded. Students who had previously ignored or avoided Marcus now sought his company, impressed by the courage it had taken to stand up against an established teacher. "Your dad changed everything," Jamal said one afternoon as they walked home. "Not just for you, but for everyone. Tyler's sister was in Ms. Peterson's class 3 years ago, says she used to make her cry every day. No one ever did anything about it until your dad came along." The changes extended beyond Westfield. Dr. Johnson had become an unexpected advocate for educational reform, his medical credentials lending weight to his calls for greater accountability in schools. News outlets featured stories about similar cases across the district, previously buried by administrative indifference or intimidation. At home, the bond between father and son had deepened. Their "honesty first" policy evolved into nightly discussions where they shared the day's challenges and triumphs. "Ms. Chen from CPS called today," Dr. Johnson mentioned one evening. "The investigation is proceeding. They may need you to make a formal statement next week." Marcus nodded, no longer afraid of telling his story. "I'm ready." "There's something else," his father continued. "Ms. Peterson's attorney has requested a meeting. They're offering a settlement if we drop the criminal charges." "What did you tell them?" "That it's not my decision alone." "What do you think we should do?" The question took Marcus by surprise. Adults rarely asked for his opinion on serious matters. "I don't want money," he said after thoughtful consideration. "But I don't know if I want her to go to jail either. What would help other kids the most?" Dr. Johnson smiled, pride evident in his expression. "That's exactly the right question to ask. I think a public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, permanent surrender of her teaching credentials, and mandatory ethics training would serve the greater good more effectively than incarceration." "Then that's what we should ask for," Marcus decided. As winter approached, Marcus's physical health improved. The weight he'd lost returned, and with it, his natural energy and enthusiasm. The nightmares about Ms. Peterson gradually subsided, replaced by dreams of future possibilities. One afternoon, Mr. Bradley held him back after class. "I submitted your history paper to the State Educational Journal Student Showcase," he said. "They want to publish it next month." This recognition, earned through genuine merit rather than favoritism or fear, meant more to Marcus than any previous achievement. That evening, as he shared the news with his father, he realized how far he'd come from those dark days of hunger and humiliation. "I'm proud of you," Dr. Johnson said simply. "Not just for your academic success, but for how you've handled everything these past months. Your mother would be proud too." The mention of his mother, rare but treasured, warmed Marcus deeply. He could almost imagine her smile, the way she'd always believed in standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. The healing had truly begun. Spring sunshine bathed the Westfield Academy courtyard as students gathered for the annual Honors Day celebration. Marcus, now in 8th grade, sat beside his father in the front row, listening as Dr. Martinez addressed the assembled parents and students. "1 year ago, our school faced a reckoning," the principal said solemnly. "We were forced to confront failures in our systems, our oversight, and our culture. Today, I'm proud to say that Westfield hasn't merely recovered from that crisis, we've emerged stronger, more compassionate, and more committed to student well-being." Dr. Johnson nodded subtly in acknowledgement. Many of the changes implemented over the past year had come from his recommendations, now being adopted by schools throughout the district. Our first award today, Dr. Martinez continued, is the new Advocacy and Courage Award, given to a student who demonstrates exceptional moral courage in standing up for themselves and others. This year's inaugural recipient is Marcus Johnson. Applause erupted as Marcus made his way to the podium, momentarily overwhelmed by the cheers of his peers. The shy, intimidated boy who had once stood alone against injustice had transformed into a confident young leader who headed the Student Advisory Council and mentored new students. After the ceremony, as families mingled in the courtyard, Marcus noticed a familiar figure hovering uncertainly at the edge of the crowd. It took him a moment to recognize her, Ms. Peterson, considerably thinner, her once imperious posture now diminished. She approached cautiously, stopping a respectful distance away. "Marcus," she said quietly. "Dr. Johnson. I hope I'm not intruding." Dr. Johnson's expression remained neutral. "That depends on your purpose here." "I wanted to apologize, in person." Her voice trembled slightly. "The court-mandated therapy has helped me understand the harm I caused. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your actions forced me to confront patterns I've been perpetuating for years." Marcus studied his former teacher. The woman who had once loomed so threateningly in his life now seemed smaller, almost fragile. The anger he'd expected to feel gave way to something more complex, not forgiveness exactly, but a recognition of human frailty. "What are you doing now?" he asked. "Community service at a food bank," she replied with a hint of irony. "And taking courses in restorative justice. My teaching days are over, but perhaps I can still contribute somehow." Dr. Johnson placed a protective hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Growth often comes from our most painful experiences. I hope you find your way forward." As Ms. Peterson walked away, Marcus felt a curious sense of closure. The cycle that had begun with that first confiscated lunch had come full circle, transforming not just his life but an entire community. "Ready to go, son?" his father asked. "We've got that meeting with the State Education Committee this afternoon." Marcus nodded, thinking of the testimony he would give about student welfare policies. His personal experience had become a catalyst for change far beyond anything he could have imagined when he first entered Westfield's doors. As they walked to the car, Jamal called out, "See you tomorrow, Marcus. Don't forget, student council planning session at lunch." "I'll be there," Marcus called back, smiling at the mention of lunch, no longer a source of anxiety but simply another opportunity to gather with friends. Some scars remained, invisible but present. Yet Marcus had learned that healing didn't mean erasing painful experiences, it meant transforming them into something meaningful. The hunger he'd once endured had awakened a different kind of hunger, for justice, for change, for a world where no child would have to suffer in silence. And that, he reflected as he glanced at his father, was a legacy worth building. Dear friend, this story highlights the devastating impact of unchecked discrimination in our educational institutions and the courage needed to stand up against it. No child should ever face humiliation, physical punishment, or food deprivation at school. If you witness injustice, speak up. Silence only protects the perpetrators. Remember, our children learn from our actions. When we fight for justice with dignity and intelligence rather than revenge, we teach them the most powerful lesson of all, that positive change is possible even in the face of deep-rooted prejudice. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that spark important conversations about equality and justice in our communities.